This is Capital Region Sunday. I'm Jessica Sims. Our guest today is Denise Nicastro, the Development Director at JDRF Northeastern New York Chapter.
We're happy to just have an opportunity to share our message or our mission.
So to start off, what is the history of JDRF, the Northeastern New York Chapter?
Well, the Northeastern New York Chapter has existed here for 21 years. The organization itself has been around for over 40 years, and it was created by a few moms that had kids that were diagnosed with type 1, which really was rare back in the day. And unlike type 2 diabetes, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on care and education or even research being done for type 1 diabetes because there were so many more people that were affected by type 2 diabetes. So they decided on their own, they knew they wanted a cure. That was it, ultimately. Where type 2 can be avoidable, it's a lifestyle acquirement of type 2 diabetes where your body, the doctor's warning you, your blood sugars start staying high, you need to lose weight, you need to be more active, etc. And then if you don't, you wind up acquiring it. That's the most common cause of type 2. There are some situations where it happens no matter what. Diabetes is a really crazy disease. But with type 1, these moms realized that there wasn't a lot of research that was happening because there was monies raised going towards education and advocacy, et cetera, for type 2. So they created the organization, and now we have probably, I think, about 85 chapters across the country for JDRF, and we really focus on many events, fundraising events throughout the year to raise money that goes directly towards our main focus is on research, finding a cure, and anything short of that, research-related activities, devices that are created that will make people living with type 1 live an easier life and then keeping them healthier longer until there's a cure.
Now, what does JDRF stand for? R is the research, right?
Yes. So we call it JDRF. JDRF stands for Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. But what's happened is that at this point in time, 85% of the people that have type 1 diabetes are adults. So it's more adults that have been living with it. So it was kind of funny. People always tagged it with kids, but there's, like I said, 85% of the population that has type 1 diabetes are adults. So
I had no idea.
We didn't want to recreate a whole new tagline or logo, so we just shorten it and call it JDRF, but we're really, type 1 organization.
How does JDRF differ from the American Diabetes Association, for example?
The American Diabetes Association has been around over 75 years, been around longer in existence, and they are an organization that helps people living with diabetes in general, type 1 and type 2. And as I mentioned, because there are so many more, to put it in perspective, there are 1.25 million Americans that have type 1 diabetes,
wow, and
there are 26 million Americans that have type 2 diabetes. So obviously the fundraising dollars that come in have to be more focused in the direction of type 2.
Sure.
And a lot of that is really educating the people, preventative measures. There are 79 million Americans that have pre-diabetes, so getting to those people before they wind up with type 2. So we are a whole little small separate niche, which is why this organization was created. So even though there are funds that are driven towards research for diabetes type 1 is an autoimmune disease, so it's acquired differently. Unfortunately, though, the outcome is the same for whether you have type 1 or type 2. Same kind of organs are affected. So American Diabetes puts their money towards, a lot of programs, education, advocacy, working with, in the government on, what items are covered through insurance. So that's a huge portion of where their monies have to go. Whereas with us, most of it, and it's great that ADA does that job because it also is, passing laws affect people with type 1 and type 2, protective things that happen in the school, et cetera. But whereas our organization really, we can't really educate anybody towards being preventative. Type 1 just happens, you just all of a sudden are at the doctor saying, well, I've lost 20 pounds in 4 weeks and I'm really, really thirsty and I crave water. The doctor will do a test your urine, and they see that you've got ketones in your urine, and which means you're in DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. So you're in the emergency room until your blood sugar comes down.
Oh, wow.
And that's how you're diagnosed. So there's no prevention for that. It's not necessarily hereditary. That increases your likeliness of acquiring it. But my daughter was diagnosed 3 years ago, and we have no history of type 1 or type 2 diabetes in our family. And just for no reason, whatever it is, they say that they don't even really know exactly what happens, but it's assumed that a virus settles in the pancreas. The pancreas can't fight it, or it winds up dying pretty much, and then your body becomes insulin dependent. By the time you're in DKA, you are insulin dependent. It is so scary, and in my situation with my daughter, I can tell you many stories, but I noticed that she was losing weight, and there were some things, like I said, gosh, there's water bottles all over our house. Her thirst was never quenched. So I recognized the symptoms, but I thought, well, there's no way my daughter would be a candidate for diabetes. We have no family history, and she looks healthy and all that, never even thinking about type 1. Brought her to the pediatrician, and they thought, oh, no, I'm sure she's fine, but they happened to do a urinalysis, and they came back and they said, you need to get her to the emergency room. Her blood sugar is over 500, wow. And the norm is around 100. So she spent 2 days in the hospital getting her blood sugar under control, and went home on injectable insulin. So it changed my life, and it changed her life, obviously, too. You
have an event coming up, the Ride to Cure Diabetes, in September. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it's one of several events that we have throughout the year here locally. This is actually new for us here, and it's coming to Saratoga Springs. The event itself happens on Saturday, September 16th, but there's a huge fanfare that happens and starts on September 14th that goes right through to September 17th. So this is a unique event in that it happens, it draws people from all over the country. We currently have over 750 people registered to ride in this event. It's a charity fundraising event, our charity, JDRF, and it's exciting is that these people come together. They are somewhat directly impacted by type 1 diabetes. Either they have it, their family member has it, they may have lost someone to type 1, so they come together as a really small, tight unit, and it's a very, we don't even like to call it an event day. It's an experience is the best way to tag it. In this event, particularly coming up in Saratoga, of the 750 people registered, 512 of them will be riding with type 1 diabetes. Wow. As I say it, I actually get goosebumps.
Yeah, so, I think I did too.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So not only do these people train for this ride, which, the distance is anything from, 15 miles to 100 miles, whatever they choose to. And it's usually a significant number, like how many years they've had diabetes, family members have it, and how old they are, like crazy little numbers, but something that's usually significant to them. And it's amazing that they'll train for this, but then not only do they have to manage the training aspect of getting yourself in shape, the muscles, your heart, and all that training that goes behind it, but they have to pay attention very closely to how their blood sugar is affected when they're riding. So that's another whole animal to have to deal with. So it's really impressive, and I have so much respect for everybody that comes out and rides with type 1 diabetes. And some of the families, we have a dad that rides for his daughter, and he's our event chair, Harry. He's an amazing man, and he will ride distances. He's ridden over 1,000 miles just training, wow. And he's not your typical rider. He's a larger person that really struggles out on the bike. But you know what he says? He says, every time I'm struggling, I realize the struggle my daughter has to go through every single day, 24/7. She's 21 years old, and her blood sugars are, erratic to say the least. So, it's a very scary disease. If you go too high or too low, you wind up in the hospital or in a coma. Those are the severe extremes. But just managing something, it's trying to catch the wind. It's very difficult.
Someone isn't physically able to ride. Is there another way they can help with the event coming up?
Absolutely. First of all, just the exposure of people in the community knowing that we're doing this. Show up, see what's going on. We'll be starting out of the city center at 7 o'clock in the morning on September the 16th. And we'll be a big visual that day because our riders come with family members. So if you are interested in the opportunity of volunteering that day, of doing something, or just being a part of this amazing day, you can call our office and we can provide information about volunteering. We have rest stops. We'd love people to be at the finish and start line cheering everyone on. It's a significant accomplishment for these people that are crossing the finish line, I can tell you. Whether it's $10 or $100, whatever donation you can, you send to that person or somebody that has an attachment, it's the only thing that makes you feel better. Like, I'm making a difference. It might be small, but in the big picture, like I said, this event itself will raise $2 million that weekend, which is tremendous for that many, with 750 riders. So we have a lot to be proud of. So our local phone number here for the chapter in Latham is 477-2873. So if you're interested, you can call, reach out. We can connect you with the national team and provide you with opportunity to volunteer that day.
And after the event is over, how could people help with the JDRF Northeastern Chapter of New York?
Reach out to our office. We are volunteer driven. We are, our base of all the work that happens is, thankfully, we have a lot of great volunteers, but it's a volunteer driven organization. In our chapter, we have a staff of 4, actually 5 of us now, that really work hard, but it takes a village. So we have a lot of volunteers that help put on these events and help us with fundraising and getting the word out. We are closer to a cure every day with every event and every fundraising dollar raised, for sure.
The best part about this is is I get to learn about some amazing organizations doing such great things for people in the area. It's
well, thank you.
$2 million is incredible to me. I can't even imagine.
I feel honored to work for this organization, I have to say. We are so lean and mean, and like 86 cents of every dollar goes directly towards research. There's no fluff in here. There's no, administrative costs are so low, and almost everything we get for events is donated. People are amazingly generous. Our chapter raises over $1.4 million every year, just our little office alone, for a disease that, may not be well known, but it's affecting a lot of people. And unfortunately, like every other autoimmune disease, is on the rise. It's terrible.
You think of the type 2 diabetes and say, well, go on a diet and you'll be fine. And that's not the case with type 1 whatsoever.
No, not at all. We're so different. It's autoimmune, meaning your body just shuts down. It stops working for no reason. It just happens. It's unfortunate. So you can't blame it on anything. First thing I say to people is, do you know the difference between type 1 and type 2? And most people don't, unless you have someone in your life that has type 1.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. That was Denise Nicastro, Development Director at JDRF, Northeastern New York Chapter. I'm Jessica Sims, and this is Capital Region Sunday.